Hi, guys. This is Susan Goss. Before we dive into today's podcast, I wanted to let everyone know that October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And to honor that, the next couple of weeks will be a little different from our usual podcast. This week and next, we will be interviewing an amazing woman who you may remember hearing about in the news several years ago. Her name is Susan Hazard. And after going through a brutal attack that left her a quadriplegic, you will hear her story of how she has found her way to peace and forgiveness. Then, for the rest of October, we will talk with experts and hear stories to educate those in need of help and celebrate those who have survived. I hope you will each prayerfully consider taking the time to listen, and if you are in need of help in a domestic violence relationship, please reach out for help or call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. And now, on to the podcast.
I was bruised from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet, bruised and wounded, but God was with me. God was with me.
I'm Susan Goss, and as a seasoned therapist of more than 15 years, I'm honored to have had the opportunity to gain so much wisdom from so many people and love passing that knowledge on to others. So join me and some of my favorite friends as we share some tangible truths with you. Hey guys, I'm Susan Goss with the Tangible Truth Podcast. We're so glad to have you back with us. And today I am actually very, very honored to have with us here at the Tangible Truth Podcast a very special guest, Susan Hazard. I want to ask you a question first. How would you respond if an act of violence left you as a quadruple amputee? That's what happened to Susan. She was an active, independent woman living a life of travel and adventure when a single night changed her life forever. That is what we're going to hear about here today. And I am honored to have you, Susan, with us. Thank you for sharing your story with Tangible Truth Podcast. I know that the night of October the 3rd, 2017, changed your life, didn't it?
Oh, yes, totally flipped it upside down.
Yes, and would you be so gracious and share the story with us?
Yes, I would love to. So by October 3rd, 2017, to give you a little background, I was retired from my work, which at that time, what I retired from was a massage therapist. And I was volunteering 5 days a week at Care and Share, which is a local nonprofit. And I loved working there because I loved the good work that they did and helping people in need. And in many ways that they would do that. I was also traveling with the International School Project, which is part of Campus Crusade for Christ. With that project, we held conferences for public school teachers and gave them a wonderful curriculum that would teach the children to make good choices in their lives and the consequences of bad choices. At the beginning of that teaching, we had them write down their goals and dreams for today, tomorrow, this week, this month, and for their life. And so good choices would help them attain these goals and dreams. And then in September 2017, I had just returned from a wonderful project in the Middle East, and I was getting ready to go to Kenya, Africa. And so I had my suitcase open. As I thought of things to take, I put it in there. We took little gifts for the teachers that we met. We'd have the teachers in small groups, and I would lead my small group. And so that was on my mind. Then in the middle of the night on October 3rd, I heard a knock at the door, and someone said, my car broke down. I need to use your cell phone. Well, I thought that was kind of risky, but if someone had a simple request from me and I was able to fulfill that request, I always tried to do it.
Mhm.
And so I knew I was taking a chance, so I just slid my cell phone out and closed the door. And he sounded normal, sounded like he was calling somebody. And then he said, "Okay, I'm done." And when I cracked the door a little bit, he pushed really hard and grabbed me from around my waist, and I started to pray. I was in a habit of prayer. I got up every morning an hour early to allow time for prayer.
Mhm.
I had lists of prayer requests, and I prayed for persecuted church throughout the world, and there was many things I prayed for. So that was my habit, a habit of prayer. And so I was mumbling my prayer, and he says, "What are you saying?" And I said, "I'm praying to Jesus." And he told me, "Be quiet." Like, no one can keep you from prayer. It
Mm.
comes from our heart, from
Mm.
our soul, from our spirit. It doesn't have to be out loud because we pray to the God who hears us, the God who sees us. And so I remember my prayer. I said, "Jesus," in my mind, I said, "Jesus, I want to live, but if not, I know that I will be with you."
Mm.
And it's only the God of the Bible through Jesus that we have assurance of eternal life with him, to a place so wonderful we don't have enough knowledge to imagine it.
Mhm.
And so after that prayer, I was just trying to survive. That was on my mind. I just need to survive this night.
Mhm.
And I remember him brutally beating me, slapping me on my face, and I had two cords, one for my Kindle and the other one for my cell phone. And he used that periodically to tie up my hands and legs, and then he would take it off, and then he would whip me on my back with it, slap me on my face, and it was just brutal. And he stayed with me for 5 hours. And finally, when he left, he says, "Don't come right down, wait an hour and then come down." He says, "You're going to be bruised, but just tell other people that you fell down the stairs." So I said, okay, with no intention of obeying what he said.
Mhm.
And so I waited just a few minutes, and I went down to my house phone. I had a house phone in addition to the cell phone
Mhm.
because he had taken my cell phone outside and put it on the back of my car, but I didn't know it at that time. So I went over to my house phone and waited not even a minute. And someone that I volunteer with called me at that moment. And certainly God was with her.
Mm.
It was, if they had called earlier, he still would have been there, and he would have just lied. And so God helped me there. And so I asked them to come and get me and take me to the emergency room, and they did. They took me to the small hospital in Gravett because I lived near Gravett,
Mhm.
which is west of here. So they came and got me and took me to the Gravett Hospital, and they checked me over. I don't even remember, but I know that they checked me over because my mind started to
Mhm.
decrease on me. And so they said that I needed to go to a bigger hospital, and I requested Mercy Hospital because I know that Mercy had my records.
Mhm.
And they said, okay. And so while I was waiting for the ambulance to come and pick me up, two detectives came.
Mhm.
Someone had called them.
Mhm.
And so they come, and by the grace of God, and only by the grace of God, I was able to tell them exactly what happened
Mm.
and answer all their questions until they
Unbelievable.
said they were done. And I gave them the keys to my house so they could go and check for evidence. And then after that, I don't remember getting into the ambulance. I don't remember getting to the hospital, but I do remember the detectives coming one more time to the hospital, and they had some of my clothes, and they says, is this your clothes? And I would say either yes or no, one by one. And later on, I was told that they found his DNA and my DNA on those particular clothes, so they used that later on in his trial.
Mm.
And so then I was put in a coma, or it was my own coma, I'm not sure which, but I was in a coma for 3 weeks. And during that time, I don't know what happened to your brain during a coma. It was like a dream that I was in Kenya already and setting people free out of this big house. I would go into the back of it and bring the ladies out and load them up on this van or bus that we had. So I still remember that. And later on, when I woke up from my coma, the nurse was there and she asked me, "Do you know where you are?" And I said, "And do you know what city you're in?" And I said, "Well, I'm in a hospital, but I don't know what city."
Mm-hmm.
And I says, "But I'm in East Africa," I told him, because that's where I thought I was. It took a while for my brain to get lined up with reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I was in that hospital, I had many surgeries. The main doctor that was in charge of my case estimated between, somewhere around 20 surgeries. And my arms and legs literally died. My hands turned black because of what he did. There was a small tear in my colon, and all the toxins from my colon went into my bloodstream and causing sepsis, which is an extremely deadly infection. And I had prayer going on throughout the United States and Canada because I knew many people because of my ministries that I was involved in. And so I had other people's churches praying for me, their small groups, and their friends, and many, many, more than I even know, that people praying for me, plus all the small churches there in Gravett and near where I lived. And so it's by the grace of God that I even lived. And so I really appreciate all the doctors did for me, certainly, but they didn't think I was going to live. At one time, I was told that they said to my pastor that I was brain dead, that I wouldn't live. I had dialysis done twice because apparently my kidneys were failing. But against all those odds, God said that I would live. And once I woke up and got my brain functioning again, I told the nurses and aides and people that I met there at the hospital that Jesus healed me, because he did. Jesus healed me, even though I've got the scars. I had drainage tubes coming out of me, to drain all the fluids that built up because of the deep wounds everywhere. I was bruised from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet, bruised and wounded. But God was with me. God was with me. And the two detectives, especially there was a lady that was a head detective. She was excellent. And she found him the next day. They arrested him initially on some outstanding charges until they gathered the evidence. But they arrested him, put him in jail, and he stayed there until his trial. So after 3 months at Mercy Hospital, I was transferred to a rehab hospital, Jamestown Rehab Hospital, where I was, given some exercises and trying to get my body stronger. So I was, I went the very beginning of January. In the middle of February, I got my first set of leg prosthetics. And at first I could just stand up for 1 minute and then sit back down. And then gradually I was able to walk like halfway across the room and sit down in my wheelchair, and then just slowly and gradually learn to walk on the prosthetics. It's not easy. It's almost like walking on stilts. And especially with double bilateral amputations. And then after I was there for 100 days, I moved to a different rehab hospital for another couple weeks. And then I went to, it's called House of Three. It's like assisted living, it's small, which is good because I can get specific help, because I need a lot of assistance now with no arms or no legs. And so then his trial came around, and that was in July of 2018. and I had to testify twice. First time testifying exactly what happens, what he did to me. And the second time I testified is how my life had changed since all this had happened. And he was there was 4 counts against him. For the first, no, 5 counts. For the first 4 counts, he got life sentences, and the 5th was, the maximum was 20 years. So he got the maximum sentencing to him. And he has to live the consequences for what he did, but yet I need to forgive. I had been in the...
Listeners, this conversation will continue part 2 next week, so please tune in. You don't want to miss it. Okay, we love you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Tangible Truth Podcast, part of the KLRC Podcast Network.